evening and welcome to the Claw Studio here at the Royal Opera House and to this insight supported by Rolex. I'm Chantal Nash and tonight it's my pleasure to take you behind the scenes of the Jette Parker Artists programme to explore the production of Tales of Love and Loss. This operatic triple bill spotlights the work of three women composers, Elizabeth McConkie with The Departure, Charlotte Bray's Making Arrangements, and Alina Langer's Four Sisters. These operas range from the tragic right the way through to the comic, and these operas are connected by themes of love and loss, surprise, surprise, and also an element of catharsis. Tales of Love and Loss opens in the Linbury Theatre on the 1st of May. So to tell us more about the production, please join me in welcoming to the space director Talia Stern and conductor Peggy Wu. Come and join me. Come on down. Welcome, welcome. Three operas.
Three operas.
Because one is never enough.
Absolutely.
Right? One is never enough. And you're on stage very soon. 1st of May we're opening. So what have you been up to this week? Where are we in the process?
So we've just finished our studio run last week in the studio rehearsal. So we've basically built the whole piece and now we just have to put all the elements together. So we're getting on stage on Friday. And we will finally put the lighting and the costumes and the set together and make some magic.
Glorious.
Absolutely.
So Friday, you're getting on the stage for the first time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Love that. And Talia, this is your Royal Opera debut. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So what has that been like so far, your journey on the Jette Parker Artists programme?
It's been amazing. I mean, the range of experience you can get on this program is huge. And so, you know, I started the year off with assisting a piece in Linbury, and then I assisted on the main stage on the third installment of the Ring Cycle, Siegfried by Barry Kosky, who is just a phenomenon, and it was epic to be on that. And it's great now to just be able to really flex my directing muscles and actually get such an incredible privilege to put on a production in Linbury and with a phenomenal cast and a phenomenal conductor, so it's been amazing.
Yeah, can't ask for more. And
Can't ask
Peggy,
for more.
this is not your first rodeo, because you joined last season in the 24-25 season, and you conducted the last year Jette Parker Artists show. So how does it feel bringing something a little bit more contemporary to the Linbury stage this season?
Yeah, no, it feels great. Last season we did Pimpinone, and that was a Baroque piece. That was also one of my first forays into the world of Baroque music. So that was a really interesting experience for me. But before I joined the program, my first show at the RBO actually was assisting on the L'Armes and Moon double bill, which was the previous Jette Parker contemporary show. And I think contemporary music is more of my comfort zone anyway.
Okay.
So having been on the program and worked on more traditional repertoire, it really feels like coming home to be in a more contemporary world.
Nice. So I feel like you can really free yourself and flex your muscles in the space. Nice. So we're going to speak about the three operas over the course of the evening and take each one in turn. But I wonder, Talia, if you could give us a brief overview of what are the key themes that pull all three pieces together.
They're very different. They're incredibly different, actually. But the thing that really ties them all together is actually a theme of, and as we've said many a time, grief, really. But it's actually in completely different ways in each piece. So the first piece is a very tragic opera, and we're looking at grief in a very, I guess, traditional sense of what grief is. The second piece is about the mourning of a marriage, so a divorce, really. And so there's a form of grief in that as well. And the third is a sort of comedic take on mourning and on grief, and it's very performative. But they all very much are within that world. And we're looking at also just sort of how people process these emotions and come to accept the new state of whatever it is. Yeah. And I think catharsis is really big for this, for all three pieces. The other thing as well is that they're all domestic stories, or stories that happen within a home. And so that also tells us about our relationship between the audience and the characters. We're all sort of looking in on private moments within a home. And so we're looking very deeply at connections and relationships between characters.
I see. And a mixed bill, can that be quite a daunting prospect for a director?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a huge sort of hill, but a great one as well. It feels actually quite close to art curation a little bit, because you're putting three pieces together that have never been performed side by side. So you're actually looking a lot at the sort of space and the questions between the pieces, and how, by putting one piece next to another, what sort of questions suddenly arise, and what has that revealed from one piece into the other. So actually it's really an interesting process. It's very dramaturgical actually in its way of, in its format, and it's been a really fun challenge.
And Peggy, we're going to hear a little bit of the music later on, but these worlds are quite distinct. So how would you describe the overall musical journey?
So I think the way the evening is organized is a very, very interesting musical journey. So the first piece, The Departure by McConkey, we're in a very melodic world. And she's a composer that really zooms in on intervallic lines and how lines weave with one another together, and also a lot of modality as well, so a lot of folk song-like elements, which is very, very pleasing to the ear. And so we're really in that world of melodic construction of the piece. And then we move on to the Bray, which is the complete opposite. Charlotte's music is very angular and it's very disjunct. And I think she also writes in a way that is extremely text-driven, so we really zoom in on the character's psychology. So we go inwards after we have this melodic picture. And then after the break, we have Four Sisters. And Four Sisters is sort of, in some ways, marrying those two musical worlds together, where you get quite dissonant moments, and you also get very disjunct moments, especially when the sisters are interacting with one another, and that highlights their relationship. But then you also get really, really stylish, really, really beautiful arias that I just love listening to when we're in rehearsal. So it feels like Four Sisters kind of bring the contrast of the first half of the evening together, and then it's very happy at the end.
Nice, I love that. And let's kick off, you've segued beautifully there, thank you so much, into The Departure, which is the first piece. And this is, as you said, about grief, and it's a tragic opera by Elizabeth McConkey with libretto by the poet Anne Riddler. And there are only two characters in this opera. Can you tell us a little bit about those two characters and what is going on?
Absolutely. So The Departure starts with us alone with Julia at her vanity table, and she realizes that something is extremely strange and off. She can't seem to find her stuff. Everything's been moved. And as she sort of is coming to terms with realizing that something is very strange, she looks out the window and she sees her husband downstairs, who's saying goodbye to all her friends. And then she starts to question all these things. Why is she not down there with him? Where is he coming from? She keeps hearing this sort of, this hymn from far away, and there's lots of questions, and she suddenly panics, because she doesn't remember his face. So he hasn't turned around yet, and she cannot for the life of her remember what his face looks like. And then as Mark, her husband, finally enters the bedroom, he doesn't see her. And eventually when their eyes meet, what unlocks there is a moment where she sees in his eyes the fact that she had actually died in a car crash a week prior, and that he's coming back from her funeral. So what happens for the rest of the opera is we're really looking at how we process grief, how two characters process grief, and very differently from each other. And we're sort of going along with the ride, and we're sort of seeing this as a metaphor of how to come to terms with sudden loss. And it's beautiful, the piece. It's really...
Yeah, absolutely.
That sounds amazing. And it was last staged at Sadler's Wells in 2007, which makes it nearly 20 years old, which makes me feel slightly sick, actually, at the thought of 2007 being 20 years ago. But audiences might not have had a chance to see it because it's not been performed for quite a while. So does that make for a directorial challenge? Is it quite exciting that you can make it your own? We don't want any spoilers, but can you tell me what the original inspiration was for your stage?
I mean, it's actually quite simple. It's a 30-minute piece, and we didn't want to sort of overfill it with anything because it's so rich in its own content. And actually, when the designer and I, Anna Ines, and I were looking at inspiration for this, we really fell on Edward Hopper's paintings as a very accessible way of thinking about loneliness and a lone figure in a room, and trying to sort of, also the relationship between audience and how we look at people through windows, and sort of being privy to conversations that we don't necessarily always get. So I think that was a huge inspiration for us, and we kept it. It's written in 1961, and we decided to keep it in the 1960s because it's so sort of drenched in its atmosphere of the time, and it felt really, for me, wrong to set it in any other time. And so we've sort of actually we're letting the piece speak for itself, and we're really just revealing its the beauty within it rather than over it.
Yes. And I should just mention that the designers for all three are the same. It's
Absolutely.
The same team.
And Inés and I are, whereas on all three. Yeah.
Nice. And Peggy, the piece is about grief, and the opera is structured around the 5 stages of grief. Can you walk us through that structure and how that shows, and maybe share some of the challenges of how you move through those stages between the two of you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think in the very beginning of the piece, we see Julia very confused. And then also, like, from a musical standpoint, like, we move from one section to the next section almost like extremely abruptly. So you see and hear this psychological whiplash going on within the character. And then we get to the moment where Mark enters. And then when Mark enters, I think, like, then we see 2 characters, and as the music unfolds, we also get an intimate look into their relationship. And later on, when we hear some of the extracts being sung by our singers, and also when we do some demonstrations on the piano, I'm going to talk a little bit more about, like, how the themes of the music weave together this picture. And then I think from that point on, we then just hear the music evolve, where the 2 characters are actually at different stages at different times. And I think Talia can tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, it's amazing. It's actually really incredible the way she's done it, because she's weaved what we think are basically, 5 stages of grief is just a term we use to sort of be able to identify and put words to what grief and the process of grieving is. It obviously is different for everybody. Yeah. But it's really helped us to use those, because we can tell that the 2 characters are going through a process at different times.
Yes.
One is always sort of a step ahead of the other.
Yes, absolutely.
And it makes for really beautiful storytelling and tension, because it's really actually quite normal for 2 people to be experiencing the same trauma, but very differently. And actually how they communicate and how they try to get back to each other is what's interesting and so beautiful about this piece.
Yeah, I think specifically, like, moments of denial and moments of acceptance. Like, the music highlights where the characters are in that journey and how they differ from one another. Yeah.
And the anger at the situation, how unfair it is that they're in this situation in the first place.
But they're not entirely alone, because there is an offstage chorus.
Yes.
So what role does the offstage chorus play?
I think the offstage chorus, first of all, the offstage chorus is sung in Latin, and the text is taken from Latin Mass and also from Psalms 120. The words of the Latin chorus, it sings of protecting the soul, the peace of sleep, with all of this imagery, where I think musically, because we hear it off stage, it's sort of like the voices of the other world, the voices of beyond our world, calling the soul of Julia to depart, and hence the departure.
Hence the name of the departure. A lovely, beautiful segue. Peggy, you're really good at this. So now I think it's time for us to hear an extract from Julia. So Peggy, can you introduce what it is that we're going to hear next?
Yeah, so the extract that we're going to hear, which is going to be sung by Ellen, it's from quite early on in the opera. And it's one of the first moments where suddenly she realizes something's wrong. Like, she's not really sure what's going on. She feels the weightlessness of herself in this mortal world, and the first hint of, like, that she's actually not here with us anymore. And then you see her go through a psychological journey of, like, there are hints of danger, and then she's back in that whirlwind. And so it's very interesting for us to hear tonight.
Okay, and Talia, where are we dramatically in the opera? What's the staging? What are we going to see?
So we're at the stage where this is before Mark has entered the bedroom, so she's still in that moment where she's looked out the window, and she realizes that if she were trying to imagine her husband's face, she actually is unable to, and that creates a lot of confusion in her. So that's sort of where we're at.
Brilliant. Well, thank you. Without further ado, now singing the role of Julia in Elizabeth McConkey's The Departure, please join me in welcoming mezzo-soprano Ellen Pearson, accompanied by repetiteur Avishka Edrasinger on the piano. Round of applause, please. Thank you.
Weightless beyond the burning the bed not made? Wasn't I here last night? But Mark, I know he's coming, and I must not keep him waiting. But why is this? How strange it is! I cannot see his face. I cannot bring his face to mind. Mark, I do not forget you, but I cannot see your face. You have been gone too long. Return, my love.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Ellen and Avi. That was amazing. So beautiful. And there's actually so much more musically that we can dig into this. And so the fun doesn't stop there. Peggy is going to talk us through a little bit more of the music and illustrate a few excerpts for us,
Yes,
I think,
absolutely.
now. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I'd
if you want to join Avi at
Yes,
the
of
piano.
course.
So what's the first thing we should know?
So we just heard Ellen perform a little bit from the beginning of the opera. And as we can hear, the mood is very mercurial. It shifts constantly, and it's incredibly exciting for us as an audience to go into that psychological journey with her. But then another really moving thing to me about this piece is the portrayal of love. And there's a love theme that goes throughout the opera that actually just happens out of nowhere. So it's after this section of very mercurial music, suddenly we hear da 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 da, and that's the love theme. And then this theme is transformed throughout the opera. So if Avi, you can demonstrate the section that comes before we first heard this theme. Everything stopped for a moment. So Julia sings this, and then suddenly she remembers the first time she meets Mark at a London garden. So da 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 represents the first time they met. And then later on, this theme is transformed in the opera, sung by Mark, when he's singing about the summer ball, which is at the height of their romance and their relationship. So if we can go to the, yeah. Remember the summer ball. And it's a waltz. Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, absolutely. So I feel the music here is just such a moving portrait of the two characters' relationship, which makes it even more poignant when we see that they have to say goodbye to one another.
Thank you. And so that's the love. And so on the other end of the spectrum, we've got grief.
Yes.
So what does that sound like?
Yeah, absolutely. McConkey does a wonderful thing where she uses a rhythm to represent the funeral procession. So the rhythm is da-da, da-da, if Avi can just demonstrate. Yes, absolutely, thank you. And so this happens immediately in the beginning of the opera. So just from the top. Yes, absolutely. And then, so we set the scene for the funeral procession that we hear in the very beginning. And then we go through Julia's journey, and then we go through the portrait of their relationship. But then at the very end, when the voices from beyond are beckoning for Julia to depart, we hear this da-da that comes back, but it's slightly transformed. In the beginning, we hear it in the horns, and at the very end, we hear it with the drum. So can we just go to the very end, please? Yes, so... And then that's how the opera ends, where da-da, da, da-da, da, just fades into nothing. And then we hear that Julia's soul has departed.
Thank you so much, Peggy. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you so much.
So the ending is really haunting.
Yes, absolutely.
It's like you're left, and then you move on to the next piece, which
Yeah.
is what we're going to do. See what I did there? Which is making arrangements. And so it's composed by Charlotte Bray with libretto by Kate Kennedy, and it's based on a short story by Elizabeth Bowen. This feels like I'm telling you things like it's a quiz, and you're like, am I getting this right? This feels,
You got it right.
Thank God, thank goodness, these cards, there's something useful in these cards. So can you tell us a little bit more about that source material, Talia?
Absolutely. So Making Arrangements is based off a short story, as you've just said, by Elizabeth Bowen from the 1920s. And actually, if ever you get a chance to read it, it's really remarkable. It's so ahead of its time. I think it was written in 1925 or something like that. Yeah. And it's the basic story, which is what our story is about, is a man who's sort of a wealthy man who's very set in his ways, receives a letter from his wife who's recently left him for another man, and they've eloped to Switzerland. And so he's receiving this letter from her where she's asking him quite a humiliating task, actually, which is for him to pack up the dresses that she's left behind and send them to him. Sorry, to her. She needs the dresses, not him. And that's the basic premise, really, is actually, it is as simple as that. He's reading a letter, and in that moment, sort of, he's imagining what Marjorie is doing in the hotel bedroom with her new lover, Leslie. And the short story that it's based on, it's very much from Houston's perspective, our main character, Houston. And what makes it so ahead of its time is that in the 1920s, one, divorce was very uncommon and very difficult for a woman to achieve, and also meant that she was, a lot of the financial freedom she had within the marriage she wouldn't have. So there's something incredibly freeing about her decision to leave, and it's a much bigger decision in the 1920s. We've decided to set this in the 1970s because we felt like, actually, I wonder what the relationship would be like between these two characters if they actually were on more equal footing, and how that changes the dynamic between them. Yeah. And there's so much in this story. So it's written originally almost like a split screen, where Houston's reading this letter, and at the same time, we see Marjorie writing the letter. And so she's there in Switzerland with Leslie, her new beau. But we thought, actually, what could be really exciting is basically putting those two together, and Marjorie and Leslie become figments of Houston's imagination. So they are sort of these two devils on his shoulder that are constantly provoking these reactions out of him as he slowly, he's a very repressed character, he doesn't deal with his emotions very well. And so by having to read this letter, he's actually having, these emotions are suddenly coming to the surface, and he's having to deal with a lot of the regret and shame he has about why this marriage broke in the first place. So it's really actually about that specifically. It's a man coming to terms with something that he has not allowed himself he hasn't looked at himself in the mirror just yet, and this really is that moment for him.
Yeah, to kind of face himself and all of
Exactly.
his feelings that he's repressed for all this time. And the idea of taking Marjorie's character into an imaginary space, does that free you up creatively?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it feels like then we have, the rules of the game are different, because it means we can play a lot more with what he thinks Marjorie is, rather than who Marjorie actually is. But then we can also find moments where when he's not looking, we get the real Marjorie finally, and we see to what extent he was unable to really understand Marjorie in their relationship. And so we get real moments of actually like almost like a couple's argument, where the same argument is they've had it so many times over and over again, and they're rehashing it, but this time it's him with an imaginary Marjorie rather than a real Marjorie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm imagining, just putting myself in Houston's shoes, that his feelings are quite elevated, quite feral, quite hostile. So how are you approaching him coming to that space of transformation at the end? How are you approaching that character arc, his development?
Well, it's the approach really is that the way that the text is written is like a play. And so it guides us completely into how those shifts and those changes should happen. I think musically as well.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
It has that feeling to it. And so I think there's a lot in being, for his character, he sort of shuts Marjorie out finally, even though she's been sort of haunting him for so long. And when he shuts her out, he's able to have a cathartic release, one that may not be so pretty. And that's what's really interesting about this piece, is we really get a very raw version of a man coming to terms with an emotion he's never really allowed himself to feel.
Yeah. And so, Peggy, how does that disintegration of their relationship show up in the music?
I think Charlotte's piece is really, really interesting because it's so completely text-driven. I mean, most opera is text-driven, but I think this is extra text-driven because the entirety of Act 1 is essentially an extended recita accompagnato. And so what we can do with the singers is that like they have a certain degree of freedom to really go into the meat of the text without having to worry too much about whether or not they're lining up with the orchestra. And that is a real treat to be working on, actually. And so for the two characters, whenever Houston is reading the letter, you hear Marjorie singing the same words, but they are melodically not connected with one another at all. And you just hear the same text, but like in two different worlds. So like in real time, you're hearing, and also they don't match up as well. Like they're not in sync in the rhythm. So you just hear the same text sung by two people, but they're just slightly off. Yeah, and then there are moments where they are together. And in those moments when they are together, those are moments of like, again, like a very intimate portrait into the couple's relationship. And then I think that's actually like one of the extracts we're going to hear later, one of those rare moments where they are together. And then suddenly Houston breaks back into his monologue. And then, of course, like during those recit moments, we just hear very stark chords. And then Houston then goes into something a little bit more psychological. And then we're really drawn into the text in those moments.
Another spectacular segue, Peggy. It's amazing. You really are a wizard in what you do. So we are going to hear the extract now. Could you just frame specifically what it is that we're going to hear? Yeah. Can you just give me a little bit more context on what it is that we're going to hear, this specific excerpt and where it falls? Atalia.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah.
Or both of you.
Yeah, so we're in Act 2.
Yeah.
And then this is one of those very rare duet moments between the two characters, and they're singing in the firelight. They're reminiscing about a good time during their relationship before the disintegration. And then suddenly we move abruptly from that moment into Houston then talking about the dresses, which symbolizes his relationship with Marjorie, actually, because he just completely objectifies her.
Absolutely. Okay. And it's a nice moment because actually they had a lot of games they used to play as a married couple, and not very nice ones. And this moment is basically him remembering the way that when they used to have big parties at their house, that she would sort of be almost a magnet, a moth to a flame. All these suitors and men would come sort of they would just be drawn over to her. And actually, I think that was one of his favorite things about her, was that almost was like a badge of honor for him. And she knew that. So it's very manipulative in the way that it's done, and it gives a little bit of color to their relationship.
Okay, thank you. So without further ado, singing an extract from Charlotte Bray's Making Arrangements, please join me in welcoming soprano Hannah Edmonds, baritone Sam Hurd, accompanied by Avi on the piano.
In the firelight, flooding and ebbing the white and room, she was truly alive. The couples moved like moths soundlessly, moths surrounding her. In the flame-colored dress, oh, the flame-colored dress, what a These heavy velvet ones, with their fur hems, they were evenings at home, reading by the light of the fire. And yes, the black dress, of course. One would have thought the flame-colored, the very essence of her, until one saw her in the black dress, so elegantly draped, sweeping the floor. The black dress was her innermost self. And, oh, there had been that evening in the billiard room. She wore it then. I can hardly think of it. What can she want with this damned Leslie? What can he offer her that I could not?
That damned Leslie. Stay where you are, Sam. Stay where you are, I've got questions. Damn that Leslie, I hate that guy. Thank you so much, that was wonderful. So if you don't mind staying with me for a minute, I've got some questions for you. Because you both joined the Jette Parker Artists programme this season. So I want to hear about what your highlights have been of the programme so far, like Tanya.
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to be in the Magic Flute with Ellen. And as the First Lady, it's such a marvellous production. And I got to cover Liu in Turandot, which is one of my dream roles, so that was amazing. And this has been a real highlight as well, trying to delve into the music and the characters and creating everything together. It's been such a wonderful experience, really.
Just some small things, just small things. How about you, Sam?
I covered in the same production of Magic Flute, and we actually went and watched at the cinema last night, which was a real treat. It was quite astonishing getting to see Ellen and Hannah up on the big screen and, you know, just getting to live it again, which was very exciting. And then being with Emanuele Aho in Traviata, Bryn Terfel in Boris, gotten off. And then George Petian in Rigoletto, it was like working with the big dogs, like Jonathan Ross would say. So
Literally.
it was an amazing thing.
Literally enormous men.
Huge men. And just, soaking up what they offer. It was very...
That's glorious. So to bring it back to making arrangements, Hannah, I think it's safe to say Marjorie she's a complex lady. She's a complex lady, and we've heard about Talia's concept for the staging and the music. But what has it been like for you to physically get to know this character and embody her and get her under your skin?
Yeah. It's been a very interesting development of the character, I think, because I went in with this idea of who she was and then exploring the idea of who she is when we're singing, if it's actually Hewson's version of her, and if that's the actual real Marjorie, or if that's just his angered vision of her, in a way. It's been really interesting to delve into those differences and try to find also the vulnerability of her, and when it's actually her speaking. So that's been very interesting to figure all that out.
For working out who she is as a person, but then who this idea of her is as a person.
Yes,
and how
the difference of being her, who she really is, and who he sees her as through the letters.
It's quite meta. It's like
you're
really
acting,
and then there's acting with on top of the acting. It's quite late, and then singing at the same time. My God, my head's spinning. Sam, Hewson's been left behind. Damn Leslie, that guy. So he's struggling to come to grips with the end of his marriage. How do you handle his journey across the course of the opera as he kind of comes from like rage to eventual acceptance at the end?
That's a really good question. Well, I think at the start he doesn't have a very good, we were saying earlier on, he doesn't sort of have a very good vocabulary for expressing his emotions. And I think, that's not you can't talk about those things at the men's club, and certainly not in the army for him. And so I think, it's kind of a journey of him trying to get to a place where he can get some of his feelings out, and it comes out in a way that I think he isn't expecting, definitely. I think the dresses, he sort of puts personalities to each of the dresses that come through, and I think he maybe isn't really expecting that. He doesn't expect them to hit as hard as they do, and I think something builds every single time with a new dress, and each one becomes more vivid, and eventually he has this outpouring of emotion, and it's quite a cathartic thing for him, but it's a little problematic. So we end up having him in a place where he is at the very beginning alone again with the maid, and but something has definitely changed in him.
Yeah. Okay, very ominous. Watch this space. I was going to ask you a question. I'm going to ask actually. Does he wear the dresses?
That was an early version.
I knew it.
I was going to say we can't confirm or deny. You'll have to come and watch. But.
There we go. Right.
It's a good version.
There we go. And both. Final question for both of you. All got giddy. What are you most looking forward to sharing this mixed bill? What are you most excited about this mixed bill?
I think just doing the whole triple bill as a whole, because there's so many amazing moments in each opera, and I think it's going to be such a wonderful ride for the audience in every opera and in every way. I think it really takes you on a roller coaster, and by the end I think you'll be going through so many emotions. So I'm just looking forward to actually doing it now. Yeah.
Sharing. How about you, Sam?
I feel the same sort of way. I'm really looking forward to having the energy of an audience in the room, because obviously always brings something electric to the space. And I can't wait to see what people think of the full journey. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, we can't wait to see it. So thank you so much. We're going to hear from you a little bit later, Hannah. But please join me in thanking Hannah and Sam and Adam. Lovely stuff. And just like that, we're on to our last piece, guys. Home run. I've had so much fun. I've learned so much. So the final piece in the triple bill is Four Sisters. And this is a dark comedy. We're getting a little lighter A little lighter.
A little lighter.
Small, small lighter. And this score is by Alina Langer and libretto by John Lloyd Davis. And it's based on Chekhov's Three Sisters. Again, I'm giving you the trinity of like fun facts I know. Am I right?
Yeah? You are right.
Great, smashing it. So Chekhov's Three Sisters is quite rich source material, but can you, Talia, tell me about how you're approaching the staging of this particular piece?
So it is based on Chekhov's Three Sisters, but it feels a bit of like a pastiche of different things. I think the ultimate sort of cherry on top joke of the Three Sisters is that obviously in Chekhov's Three Sisters we have three sisters who have just lost their father and they're yearning to go back to Moscow. And in this version we have three sisters who've just lost their father who despise Moscow and hope they never have to go there. So it's just sort of the flip version of that. But it also has sprinklings of Cinderella in it because we have this maid character on top of it, which really creates that balance between a Cinderella character who's really much more of this world, earthly, and also just someone we relate to. And then we have three sisters, like the stepsisters in Cinderella, that are very sort of cruel and greedy and only think about themselves. So there's a bit of that. We also have Cinderella, who in this opera, she's sort of a character who really, really wants a fairy godmother. She would love one, actually, that would really help her out, but she doesn't have one. So she kind of becomes one herself, which I can sort of talk about a little bit later. But that's sort of the format. And on top of all of that, there's a bit of Sex and the City, because we're in New York City in the 1980s, and there's also there's so many things that we can pull from this, and I think it's a really fun opera. The general plot, just as a teeny tiny synopsis, is that basically we arrive, we open the opera with three sisters who are at their father's penthouse New York City apartment. Their father was a very wealthy Russian oligarch who made all his wealth in America. And so they're waiting impatiently for the family lawyer to arrive to read the will. And they all want to know who's gotten the most in the will. They want to know who's inherited the most. So they start sort of yapping at each other, and it's a lot of sort of confrontation between them because they're trying to figure out who's going to get the most. And then we have this wonderful maid character who's a narrator who's basically the constant critique for all of us of them and their behavior and how obscene and absurd it is. Yeah. But also it's a critique of America in general, because there's this one line that opens and closes the piece, which is, America is a vast conspiracy to make us all happy. And she really represents the fact that she's an immigrant herself. She's come to America. She hasn't made it. She's a maid. And she's desperate to finally have the promise of this American dream, which is not happening for her. So she really represents that. And it's just really interesting to see how that line, we sort of unpack it throughout the whole opera. Yeah. And the three sisters become almost a symbol of what capitalism and over-consumerism can do to people. And that's why we set it in the 80s, because we thought height of consumerism, Reagan economics, we're looking at people getting wealthier and wealthier, and that the wealth gap is getting bigger and bigger. So we're really looking at a moment that actually, I think, is a precursor to our time today and everything that's happening in politics today. So it felt like the right moment, and also now we've gone linearly between 60s, 70s, and 80s, so it's sort of our way of wrapping the three pieces together.
Nice. And this idea of grief then, I guess it's a literal grief because there is a death at the centre of it. But
absolutely.
There is the grief of the maid character and the loss of all the things, the promises that have been unfulfilled. So there's completely different ideas of grief. I love it.
Exactly.
Very nice. So we are very lucky because Peggy is going to chat to us about the music and hear a little excerpt. But before we get into the details of that more, I'm delighted to say that Alina Langer, who composed the work, is actually here with us this evening. Alina has written operatic chamber and orchestral pieces, and her opera Four Sisters was created in 2012. And these Linbury performances mark the world premiere of the chamber version of this comedy. So please join me in welcoming Alina into the space right now. Thank you. Welcome. Welcome to our little salon. Very intimate, very small, very low-key. It's wonderful to have you with us. We're so lucky. Can you please tell us a bit about the original commission and what inspired the project?
Yes, it's lovely to be here. It's an old opera. It's 14 years old.
Okay.
And it was commissioned by Dawn Upshaw for her students at the Bard College in New York. So I'm very glad that young singers are doing it here because there is something young about the piece. And as usual with classes of singers, there were more women than men. And she said, can you please make like a bit more female characters, and maybe not, don't make any central characters. So all the sisters are quite equal in the piece, and everyone gets to sing a song. So I jumped at this idea, and it was a concoction of things, as Talia was saying. It's slightly superficial. I like postmodern things. So one of my previous operas is called Figaro Gets a Divorce, where I wrote a sequel to the marriage. And in this case, I'm just taking Chekhov names mostly and a canvas of the thing. So the Olga, Masha, Irina, like the Russian names. Yes, and then there was a huge drama to do with the libretto writing, because I asked a very famous librettist to provide me the text, and she agreed. And then on a day of her deadline, she said that she's not going to do it. So I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? And naturally I was in tears, but I was invited, and John Lloyd Davis, who wrote the libretto, he was running the Linbury in 2012, and he was a director. And so I was invited to some function, some reception, and I came and I chatted to him, and I said the most horrible thing happened to me. I was completely dumped by this librettist on her deadline, and I have to write an opera very quickly, and I don't know what to do. And he said, actually, I'm designing 3 sisters in Vienna now. And I said, can you make it like 4? Something like that. So he saved my bacon, and he provided a synopsis within a week.
Wow.
And I liked it. And it's quite, as you know, it's quite tricky to write a comedy. And and he made this little story, and within a couple of more weeks he gave me the libretto, and but I have to say that each sister in the original libretto of John's had a boyfriend. Ooh. But I felt that in New York, when we produced it, you know, some composers can get the drama from the first go. I probably couldn't get it from the first go, but even Shostakovich changed things along the way. So I realized that all the boyfriends are completely redundant.
Oh.
So I cut them. And so we're left with 4 sisters and with an image of a boyfriend rather than the actual thing.
I think we should, if we are thinking about merch for this, I think a T-shirt said all boyfriends are redundant. It's just what you need to start selling in the shop. That's what I think. So Alina, it was originally composed for a full symphony, scored for a full symphony orchestra. Obviously, it's been rescored here for a chamber ensemble. What has that process been like for you?
Well, it's very difficult actually, because I love. It's probably my Russian, you know, background, where I love orchestrating and creating big textures, and like Rimsky-Korsakov timbres and all of that. And so I wrote a big score. The piece is quite short, but the orchestra is huge. But then for the Linbury, they asked me to reduce it, and it's always a difficult task. So from almost triple symphony orchestra to 14 players,
wow,
while trying to create these different worlds. There's something sparkly and something. So it's boring for you to know. It's just technical, but it was tricky, believe me.
There's no doubt in the room. We believe you. We believe you. So Peggy, let's talk about some of the key themes here. And Alina, jump in because I want to hear this back and forth between the two of you. The sisters each have different music. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So can you tell me a little bit about the music they have?
Yeah, so I mean, like Alina said, each sister, they have an aria, and they're all very, very stylish. So we have some Caribbean music, we have some klezmer music, and I think the musical signature of each sister is very distinct. But somehow, when they're all singing together, they are absolutely dissonant. And like they are so, as characters, they are so nasty to one another. And so like, I think musically, like when they're in a group, like somehow they just like turn a little bit animalistic almost. And so like we hear that in the sound, and it's absolutely fascinating because when they're together, like it really highlights how they relate to one another. But then a standalone, they're like pleasant people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The weird ones always are. And the maid's music, how does that contrast?
Yeah, so the maid's music, actually it's super interesting because what the maid sings are like, she sings like little motifs where we hear in the overture and also in like the large instrumental sections. So for example, her first line, Alive or Dead, is the opening theme, ba 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 ba, and then ba 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 ba, da ga da ga. That's the cityscape of New York. And within the cityscape, we hear like really wonderful themes like the siren theme, da 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 da. It's like New York traffic. It's like, you know, the honks of the taxi drivers and everything. And so most of those thematic material is woven into what the maid is singing. So almost like the maid character represents New York City and represents the American consumerism that Talia has talked about earlier. And her music is slightly standalone to the rest of the sisters.
Okay, nice. So we're actually going to hear an extract now. Peggy, can you tell us what we're going to hear, and then Talia kind of tell us where this sits in the story?
Yeah, so we're hearing the opening, we're hearing the introduction of all of these characters. So we hear the maid first, and I've just sung her line, Alive or Dead. That's her first line. And then that's also when she starts singing of like, America is a vast conspiracy. That's such a key line we hear in the opera, and she introduces it almost like within the first few lines of what she sings. And then as soon as that happens, we then hear the beginning of the three sisters when they come in and they sing Father, and they're trying to outdo one another in their grief. And so we just hear this father get like more and more hysterical. I think in the score, it's like the hysterical lament.
Yes, hysterical and fake.
Yeah,
all
fake
of them
lament.
are very fake.
Yeah, very, very fake. So yeah, that's like our first look into the three sisters character, and it sort of sets the stage for how the rest of the opera is going to unfold.
Yeah, really. I'm going to call it, the next time my 7-year-old has a tantrum, I'm calling it the fake lament.
Ale, did you ever check? Because John Lloyd Davis wrote in a libretto, was it Updike? Was it Nabokov or Updike
Yes.
said?
Yeah.
So who said it?
It's Updike.
Updike.
Yes, John Updike wrote in a 1972 New Yorker article, America's a vast conspiracy to make us all happy, and it was an article entitled "How to Love America and Leave It at the Same Time." So I think it's very telling.
I think that might be the most Googled phrase at the moment. Right, Elena, it's been wonderful having you with us. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to the production.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And now, we're going to welcome back to the space Ellen Pearson, who is joined by Chingwen Tsai, Madeline Robinson, and Hannah Edmonds, and Avi on the piano to hear some music. Please.
Alive or dead, you've not much time to chase the dream, so make it snappy. Was it Nabokov or Updike who said, America is a vast digging up the well, or counting up the gold. Father died, Father died, Father died. Now we are incredibly wealthy. Too much grief is unhealthy. Bitch, you get the most, bitch. You were his favorite. Bitch, bitch, you gold diggers, airheads, money grabber, white trash, self-obsessed, overweight, overweight. Bitch, 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 bitch. Time is the great healer.
Thank you so much, Ellen, Chingwen, Hannah, Madeline, and Avi on the piano. That was amazing. I heard someone, literally, one of them hiss like a cat. I don't know what, who knows that note, but that was brilliant. Like, at the end, it gets really barbed. Another thing to add to the gift shop, tequila. Like, there needs to be tequila shots
Good
at
for
the bar.
marketing space.
Amazing. Not enough operas have the word tequila in them, I think. Glorious. Well, that's it. That's the three pieces. We've done it. We've covered them all. I can't wait to see them. And it's been really lovely to deep dive into three of these pieces. What I love about Insights is you get to really get under the skin of an opera and give the audience a lovely taster of what to expect. So it goes without saying that actually all three of these operas are written by women composers, which is no small thing in this world. What has that meant to you, Talia, to present three operas in the same bill by three women?
I mean, I think it's such a privilege, really. I mean, we are still, unfortunately, living in a world where most of the stories that we receive on stage are written by men. So it's just so important to start hearing the female voice more. And for me, on a personal level, I feel like a lot of the time when I look at a piece as a director, I'm having to sort of, and this is, the canon, I'm having to constantly think about how I'm going to sort of bend it into shape that I want it to, so I can really include the female voice in that. And I didn't have to do that for this triple bill, and it was such a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
And it also meant that it's not like we're looking at, what's so rich about this is that the female characters in all of these pieces are so interesting and complex, so different from each other, some quite difficult, some quite tricky, not always good qualities, and that's what makes sort of the variety in how we write about women needs to be done more, because there's so much more in that.
Yeah.
And I felt for me it was a real freedom that I felt having done this.
That's so nice. You know, we're pretty interesting, complex creatures, women.
Yeah,
just
we
saying.
are.
We're pretty cool. We're pretty cool. And Peggy, why does it feel important to you to stage these stories? And how do you think they relate to 2026? I think with Four Sisters, it's very clear. It's quite clear how it relates to us today. But in your opinion, Peggy, why is it important, and how do they?
Yeah, I think most of the reasons that Talia has just said so eloquently. But I think like diving into the music as well, like being able to think about the female psychology and to explore with the singers how their vocality can express that is very, very interesting. I mean, we talked like about Marjorie's character, we talked about the sisters, and we talked about Julia. I think these are just the characters themselves are so 3D, and then being able to musically engage with the 3D-ness of these characters through sound, and then to then take a step back and think about how all of these characters, the way they're sung, the psychological nature of that, and then how that can feed back into the orchestral sound. I think that is a very fulfilling process for me to go through. So yeah, I think, you know, just as Talia says, I think we need to have these voices being presented. And then for me musically, I think it makes the work more interesting.
Yeah, keep it fun. And what have been highlights in the process for you both in terms of making these free operas? What have been your highlights? And also challenges, actually. What have you found tricky about it? Because it's not easy. Let's not.
I mean, I think 3 pieces has
Yeah,
always
absolutely.
a challenge. But to be honest, I felt like I've been in such safe hands because we have such an amazing cast of these young singers who are just so capable of everything. Yeah. And it's so collaborative the way that we work, and it's been so wonderful doing this with Peggy. And it's just been, for me, that's the real highlight, is that we are, as a cohort, we are constantly on different projects, and we don't always get to meet and work together in such depth. And here we really just get to be with each other and make really fun, interesting, and thought-provoking work, and that for me is a real gift. So that's the highlight for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I totally agree with what Talia just said. I think the rehearsal room energy that we have is fantastic. Like, it really feels, we've rehearsed in the studio off-site from the building. So it almost feels like that's our little world among the Jette Parkers. And then we go to the Italian deli down the street together. And just having the opportunity to do something like that together outside of our main stage responsibilities has been a real treat.
Oh, that feels really wholesome. Could I come? Please, could I come? And what do you hope audiences will take away from this when they come to see it on the 1st of May at the Linbury Theatre?
Ooh, I always hate that question because
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. The audience has every right to feel everything they want to feel, but just feel something. I think that's really that my job is done if you feel something, big or small.
That's it. What would you like, Peggy, on your Christmas wish list from the audience? What would you like them to take away?
I would love them to enjoy an evening of rich and varied and super interesting sound world.
Nice, easily done. Well, thank you, Talia and Peggy. It's been so lovely speaking to you. And it's been great to get a peek into these 3 kind of remarkable operas. But sadly, that's all we've got time for this evening. But I'm really looking forward to seeing this on stage in a few weeks' time. A reminder, Tales of Love and Loss opens in the Linbury Theatre on the 1st of May. So please visit our website for tickets if you haven't already got them. I'd like to take a moment to thank all of our guests this evening, including Alina, our singers, Ellen, Hannah, Sam, Jingwen, Madeline, and of course, Avi, who's been sat on the piano this whole time. So thank you to my audience here in the Claw Studio. You've been so warm and generous. And thank you very much to you all watching online at home. We hope you've enjoyed this insight. Thank you and good night.